So just a few things. Since this is a trial, we're going to wing it here. So Roger wanted me to share September 27th, this Friday, and 20th in Lawrence. They're having a Indiana Balloon Fest. If you're interested, we'll put this in the newsletter. And it is.
It's in Bedford.
Bedford at the fairgrounds, Lawrence County Fairgrounds. So, interested? That'd be a fun thing to take your kids, grandkids, whatever. And then over in Richmond in October, on the 19th of October, from 7 to 9:30, Back to the City's big band. That might be interesting if you're a musician or like that kind of music. So, takes you way back. So, there we are. Yeah. Weather news. So this will be my last meeting. At the end of this, you're going to get the last dad joke. It's going to be a good one. Everybody's happy about that because they're so bad.
Pressure's on your.
Yeah.
What's going to be your shtick?
What's going to be your shtick?
Architect jokes.
Maybe you should just leave it alone. Maybe just leave it alone.
That's
Yeah.
President Jones.
Yeah.
As you know, we do a lot with the Salvation Army, and a lot of us are on the board of the Salvation Army, so we thought it would be nice if our new Central Indiana Area Commander came and spoke to us, Major O'Neill. And she said, yes, I'll get up early in the morning and come downtown Indianapolis to do this. Yeah, so if I could introduce Major Mindie O'Neill. She comes to us from, her most recent position was Wisconsin, is that right?
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Wait, Green Bay, so she already knows it's not going to be as cold down here as it is up there. So, Mindie, if you're just coming over, if you need me to share things, I'll pass them around while you're speaking.
Well, I brought a number of themes, that some of which you may have had before. So, but this is a little more fresh. So I will just.
Here, we'll pass them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we'll pass them.
Don't pay any attention to my happy job. I'm terrible as an admin. Sometimes people ask me about what, like my administrative assistants, and I have two. And like, oh, you know, how do they do? I'm like, I don't know, but I know when they don't do it, and this is what happens. Is the paper? Some of them are two different kinds of paper. Just so you know. I'm sorry. Am I on TV here?
Yep.
All right. Well, should I sit down? Well,
Whatever you
I
want.
could sit down, but
You should do what makes you comfortable. Do whatever you want.
okay.
You're good. Perfectly fine.
So I do have this a number of things. So that is our most recent newsletter, and then I think I see it coming out. The 2024 Christmas activities are out as well. So there's a lot of things for you to look at and peruse through. A few of those I just brought a small handful of, because they're really geared a lot more for people who are in need of services, but it's interesting about what we do. So the Salvation Army has been in Indianapolis, as you may know, since 1889. So very close to the time when the Salvation Army was founded in 1865 in London, England. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'll hold this chair so I don't dance.
Sorry for the noise.
In 1887, the Salvation Army arrived in the United States. So 1889, migrating from St. Louis, Missouri to Indianapolis is pretty good turnaround time. So we've been here serving Indianapolis since 1889. The division currently encompasses the whole state of Indiana. In 2020, the Salvation Army made some boundary changes. So Indiana had been broke up in a couple of different divisions, but in 2020, the Indianapolis area headquarters started overseeing the entire state of Indiana for the Salvation Army. So in 2022, the Salvation Army of Indianapolis opted to break out central Indiana, which is Marion County and the counties that border Marion County. And so we call that the Central Indiana Area Command. So that's mostly what I'm going to talk about today, but if you have other Salvation Army, broader Salvation Army questions, I'm also able to talk about those things. But I want to tell you mostly today about what we're doing in the Central Indiana Area Command. So some of our key programs and services are what is most well known in social services, offering emergency financial assistance to people in need, primarily through housing, utilities, and food pantry. There are some other needs that we can sometimes help people with, kind of one-off costs, if it is causing a crisis or a barrier for them to have success in taking care of themselves. The other major component of the work that we do in Central Indiana is in recovery, addiction recovery. Historically, the Salvation Army primarily focused on alcohol recovery, so the Adult Rehabilitation Center was primarily serving people who were suffering from alcohol abuse and addiction that came with that. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, the Salvation Army started to become a little bit more diverse in what we could offer in addiction and moved to other drugs besides alcohol. And today you would be able to find opportunities for recovery from both substance abuse disorders, but also gambling addiction and other kind of addictive behaviors that people struggle with. So we actually have 3 different places in Central Indiana that can help people depending on their situation with recovery. So we do have the Adult Rehabilitation Center on Washington Avenue, which is a men's facility. That's of no cost to clients who go there, and that's a work therapy program. So the men who are in recovery there, part of their recovery is also job skills and life training and helping them to just kind of see what a normal life would be like without that substance abuse activity. So they get up, they go to work, they go to meetings, they have some other kinds of things. And it's also a dry recovery. So the difference in that is you have to enter already sober.
And we got to hear payment today too.
Awesome.
He's either
I'm
gonna
really
dance-
excited.
He's either going to dance or turn it down.
Oh, so if somebody is under the influence, they need to become sober or detox somewhere else before they could go to the ARC. Our Harbor Light Center, which is on Tibbs Avenue, I believe, that actually is also focuses on recovery. They take men and women, and it's a clinical-based recovery center. So they do have detox, they do have medical people on staff, so you can actually enter the Harbor Light even if you are under the influence. They're able to manage that. And they are no cost to the patients if they don't have insurance. If they do have insurance, we are able to bill insurance like a medical facility would do. But your lack of insurance or ability to pay does not preclude you from getting services at the Harbor Light. And that is because they focus on recovery through the medical side of recovery. That goes in different phases. So they have a 30-day detox or withdrawal management depending on where they are, and then they move into different phases of recovery. They focus primarily on the medical issues that come with addiction, substance abuse disorders, psychological, emotional care, and then we work with a lot of partners there to help people rebuild their life through the Harbor Light Center. And then finally, the Women and Children Center, which is not necessarily a recovery center, it's a domestic violence shelter, but a lot of our folks who come in there, as you can imagine, are also dealing with some kind of addiction or substance abuse or things like that. So we have some services available for them if so needed. But the primary reason that they exist is to shelter women and children who are escaping from domestic violence. The other people do come, but primarily it's women with children who are coming out of domestic violence situations at the Women and Children Center.
Where is that located?
On Michigan.
It's on Michigan
Alabama.
and
And
Alabama.
Alabama.
Michigan,
Okay.
Alabama.
Right near Riley Towers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in this town for like 89 days. I'm just about to my 90-day review. I think I'll pass, maybe.
I hope so.
You are a recovering Rotarian.
We won't hold it against you. My father's family is Catholic, like very Catholic, like really extremely Catholic. Like if I were a boy, I'd be a priest Catholic. So I get the same kind of stuff when I go home. I'm on loan. I'm out on loan today to the Kiwanis.
Sorry.
I've actually not joined a Rotary here, but it's in my plan. Also, moving along, we have some housing programs. We do have 2 rent-based housing units also at that Michigan-Alabama area. Some of those are just people who are looking for affordable housing, but we also have opportunities for people as they move through some of our programs to restabilize. So there's a lot going on in that housing thing that I don't necessarily want to get into all those details today, but kind of both things happen there. So it's fair market rent, it's affordable housing, but it's open to the market, and also we have some programs for some of our folks who might be moving from either recovery or the domestic violence shelter or a Pathway of Hope program, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in a minute. Finally, at our core community centers, which are Eagle Creek and Fountain Square, and the Harbor Light also has a worshiping congregation there. You would find most of the programs that you would be looking for, like at a church. So youth programs, women's programs, programs for seniors, and also all of our social services is administered from those core. Some of the youth programs are designed to help prevent young people from moving into the need of those other services. So we work really diligently with children, their families, community partners such as schools, other churches, other youth agencies to provide opportunities for young people to develop skills, character, and do things in healthy ways, and so it gives them positive choices to make instead of falling into some of the pitfalls that they might find themselves. A lot of our kids who come to Salvation Army programs are kids who are coming out of from families who are in poverty or in need. Not all, you would find a mixture of kids, but because our outreach is primarily to those who live in below the poverty line, a lot of our kids come from there, and it's so we are really intentional with young people and helping them see other opportunities. And then finally, our Pathway of Hope program, which is designed to help families in the long term who are finding themselves in a cycle of poverty. It was particularly designed, I think it actually came out of this division probably 20 years ago, to help families that they were seeing repeatedly coming in kind of for the same services over and over again and really come alongside. So it's a mixture of financial assistance, life coaching, networking, mentoring, and to stay by families for over a long period of time, a year, a couple years. It kind of depends on what the family needs, but really help them to break the pattern that keeps them in poverty. So it really looks at a lot of barriers that people have to overcome to get out. So socioeconomic, education, family dynamics, all kinds of things can help people. And in a little while, when I tell you how you can get involved, I might talk to you about being a mentor in our Pathway of Hope program. So our impact statement for Central Indiana Area Command is transform lives and revitalize communities. And what we're looking for to know that we are actually making that impact is lives changed. So our customers, clients, residents, patients, whatever, however we might classify them, just normally we'll use the word customers. We are surveying them. We are tracking them. We are watching how they move through life after receiving our services, and that the evidence that we're looking for in life's change. So a lot of our folks, especially through the Pathway of Hope and our recovery centers, kind of set their own goals. So my goal is to be in recovery, to live sober, or my goal is to return to school, or my goal is to secure another job, or get my kids back, or whatever it is. When they've reached that goal, we're tracking that. And then families being strengthened, as you can imagine, especially people who are really struggling and they have a lot of pressures and they can't make it on their own. Their family sometimes gets torn apart. Maybe kids are taken away, or they have to let someone else take care of their kids, or maybe their kids are there but they're just working so much they can't give the kids the attention that they need at that time. Helping them overcome those barriers and obstacles really puts their families back together. Our goal also with our people that we're serving is that as they're improving their life, they are also then impacting their community and adding to the greatness of their community. So they're giving back to society once they get in that place. And that doesn't happen overnight. That can take a really long time. But that is the ultimate goal, right? All of us, we're here today because we want to give back to our community. That's like a natural part of contributing to society. So as I mentioned, we have emergency assistance, addiction, recovery, youth development programs, supportive housing, and then we also have disaster services available in Central Indiana. So whether it's a naturally made or man-made disaster, our team stands on the ready to help. So we have people who can respond to fires, tornadoes, massive events where a lot of police and other emergency personnel might be involved. And so the Salvation Army can show up with a little box truck that often has hot coffee and probably cookies in it. But really what it has is people who are ready with their boots on, pastoral care, phones, whatever. And so whatever the crisis calls for, we do our best to meet those needs as immediate as possible. And because we do have that team right here in Indianapolis, we can respond pretty quickly to the Central Indiana, anywhere we might be in Central Indiana. There are disaster service teams throughout the state, so wherever that disaster might be, someone might show up right from that very area, but if it's a long-term thing, people might start to be deployed from other areas. So providing disaster services. The best thing that I love about the Salvation Army Disaster Services is because we are already local, disaster services, that support can last a long time. We all know that in the moment of crisis we need help right now, and kind of once the crisis gets cleaned up, people kind of go back and you know that they need to, and that's fine. With the Salvation Army providing services every day to communities, that disaster care can happen actually for a really long time afterwards. So, you know, a tornado can take your house down in about a minute, but it could take years sometimes to rebuild if you've lost, and especially if you're already struggling. Some of the challenges we have in Central Indiana have, if you have questions, you just have to interrupt me. I'll just keep doing it. Some of the challenges that we see here in Indiana, and again, I have only been here about 89 days, but is financial constraints. We have, there's always an increase of demand for services and talent and all the resources that we need. And our financial situation is not particularly deteriorating, but it's not growing along with that increased demand. So we're looking at different ways to engage the community and donors and support. We're looking for ways to make our services more efficient so the dollars we do have can stretch even farther and be more impactful. And then we have our property issues. As somebody had mentioned, one of our buildings, we recently realized like the entire north wall, which is about 100 years old, needs to be replaced. And so, you know, we have multiple facilities that all demand care and things. So we're looking at how we can best keep up our properties, or what we might need to do to reallocate some things, and so that those don't become a hurdle to us to provide services to people. Especially since the pandemic, most charitable or service organizations, and even outside of charity, human service-oriented organizations have been facing employee burnout, compassion fatigue, and that the Salvation Army has not been immune to that. So again, as the demands, yes?
Compassion fatigue. Can you,
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay, so it's kind of this phenomenon that caregivers have been struggling with. So it's most common in like nonprofit work, social work, and the medical field, mental health, where they're giving and they're giving and they're giving and they're not taking care of their own self, which probably, like, pastors are probably the worst at praying for themselves. Doctors are probably the worst at taking care of their own body, right? So as it starts to build up and get there, I guess it's more fancy word for burnout. Yeah. So and then even our staff and volunteers, right? Keeping everyone motivated and energized, but also well cared for, so that we can continue to serve. And then some things that are being faced all over the country, but definitely in central Indiana, is the lack of affordable housing. There's a lot of details and things to unpack behind that, but the statistics are demonstrating that there's just not enough affordable housing for low-income families or people who are struggling to move into. Economically, I have heard and read there's not enough new houses being built for people who are ready to move into that next level, so their starter homes are not becoming available. When we were in Wisconsin, we had found some research to demonstrate that there's not enough senior housing for seniors to move into, so seniors are staying in their houses longer because there's not enough senior communities, so then those houses aren't available. So people aren't moving through the housing system just because of lack. So there's a lack of housing at every level, but what's critical for us is the lack of affordable houses for families. So 4 goals that I can see so far for the Central Indiana Command. These aren't necessarily official. My team and I have talked about them. We're actually just kind of engaging in a strategic planning process for Central Indiana. But one would be to increase self-sufficiency through job training and employment support. So we do have a lot of facilities and we have a lot of opportunities for people to work. So we have housing facilities, which would require property management, maintenance, things like that. So we would have opportunities for people to be coming through job training for those. At our residential buildings, we have all the services: food service, janitorial service, child care services. So we would have opportunities for job training and those kind of things. And then even in professional realms with social workers, our divisional headquarters, which includes development professionals, bookkeepers, IT people, admin assistants. So we have a lot of sectors of the employment industry. So we have a lot of opportunities to leverage that to help do some job training. So I'd like to look through those kind of things. Expanding affordable housing. We do have, as I mentioned, some buildings that already are housing. We have some other opportunities potentially available. So I'd like to look at how the Salvation Army might be involved in expanding affordable housing, even if it's through partnerships and things like that. Increasing our youth development and academic success with young people through our core community centers, and then strengthening community partnerships. So some ways that you can help. We do have, as many of you already are aware, a lot of opportunities for volunteering. We have all the things that people think of. Coats for Kids is coming, bell ringing, toy shop, Angel Tree, all of the really big public everyone seems to know about. But we also have other ways that you can really dig in and get involved in impacting the lives of other people through youth mentoring, or even mentoring another adult who might just need another supportive, positive, healthy, successful person in their life, and coming alongside people like through our Pathway of Hope program. Participating with our fundraising efforts through events we might have, our capital campaign, and other annual programs like the Red Kettle campaign and things like that. And then one thing that we would really like to strengthen is those community partnerships. So if your agency or a company you work with or for or by might be interested in how the Salvation Army might be able to join them, or how they might be able to join the Salvation Army and really making an impact in our life. Ultimately, what our goal is to build stronger communities. So we understand it really takes a community to make that happen. So I am really thankful for the time here, and I'm sorry that I'm a Rotarian and not Catholic.
I was gonna ask you, you know, there's a war each year between Kiwanis and Rotary
I've heard.
on the Bell and Bucket Brigade.
Yes.
War.
It's a friendly competition.
No,
challenge.
So if it's not a competition
If we win
anymore
that.
with how successful we've been against them. Call it a rivalry.
Do we say, oh, that's
We win.
cute?
Only one
Yeah.
side wins, you know?
Yeah.
A question about your disaster recovery.
Uh-huh.
Do you jointly work with other groups like Red Cross?
Yes.
Whoever?
Yeah, so typically we all kind of arrive on scene and have sort of our assigned roles. I'm not really well rehearsed in what that looks like in central Indiana. Duke might be able to help me with that. But in my other experiences, a place like American Red Cross or the Convoy of Hope are really focused on the actual victims of the disaster. And the Salvation Army, usually in those early hours, have been focused on supporting the emergency personnel. But in long term, because that script kind of flips. So sort of once the disaster has been cleared, a lot of the emergency people have gone home, the Salvation Army can move into helping those victims restore.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, we, just as an example, I know that Fountain Square is tied with Johnson County.
Yes.
And there was a tornado down in
Yeah.
Whiteland.
Yes.
And so Major Mary and Major Mike, they were down there and helping for not just the initial time, but like a year later.
Yeah.
They were still there, like handing out cards and meeting with people.
And as important as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it connected to a church?
The Salvation Army is an international denomination, so it's a what's the word? It's a not Catholic. It's a Protestant. It's a Protestant church. It's Wesleyan.
Coffee?
Yes, coffee. It's Wesleyan.
Father Duke?
The Salvation Army founder, William Booth, actually was a Methodist minister. So at the founding of the Salvation Army, William Booth was at the time appointed to the East End of London, you know, Victorian London, Jack the Ripper crawling around the streets, like that era. And so, yeah.
He was a
It just said
Rotarian.
William Booth. Oh, wait, Jack the Ripper was a Rotarian? There's a lot of famous Rotarians.
Start.
Can you tell he's the membership chair?
William Booth is legend to have been a Mason. It's fun. Either way, you know, just kind of setting the scene. Just a lot of poverty, desperation going on in that time. Also in that time, you needed to be fit for church, right? So your family paid for a pew. That's the pew your family sat in, and if you were unacceptable, you often weren't welcomed in a worshiping congregation. And he was just really like not content with that. So the Salvation Army was born out of discontentment for the Methodist Church, in short. We are reconciled today, get along just fine. But so if you're Methodist,
And his daughter Evangeline.
his daughter
started
Evangeline
Salvation
started,
Army in America.
yes, and was the second general of the Salvation Army. So we've been letting women lead since about 1900.
You talk about addiction, the trend, like is it going up? Is it stable? Is it, are there obviously alcohol, but are there the harder drugs you're dealing
Yeah.
with?
I'm definitely not a substance abuse expert. However, the statistics are not going down. We recently had an event for Harbor Light, and a physician actually spoke and said that in fact prescription drug abuse is increasing, particularly opioid and fentanyl-based drugs. And he was predicting that that really was gonna just kind of skyrocket over the next few years. So helping people who are doing recovery just kind of really brace for those more chemical, like stronger chemical kind of addictions. So I would imagine like the need is going to just continue to be relevant.
Do you know, like for Harvard Life, the success rate, or as general Harvard Lives throughout the country?
Yeah.
Compared to other programs?
Yeah. So in order to be certified or through the federal government and through the medical community, your success rate with recovery needs to be somewhere between like 15 and 30%. So they consider that a successful program of people completing your 28 or 30-day program. There's some statistics that go on, you know, that maybe like between 30 and 40% of people actually continue to live in recovery for more than a year. Faith-based recovery centers actually have an average of about 70% recovery rate, likely due to the holistic nature of addressing the addiction. And Harbor Light and ARC is around that mark, around 70%. And that is 1 year. So it's a little higher for that short-term 28 or 30-day program. It's pretty, their success rate in getting people to complete a program is more like 80 or 90 even, but that over that long term, which is about up to 1 year, our Harbor Light and ARC are both holding around that 70%.
So once they leave Harbor Light, do you still keep in contact?
Yeah, so we have two outpatient programs. We have the intensive outpatient, which they're still coming to us very regularly, like once a week or so. But then through long-term case management, we're checking them up to about a year. If they're eligible or interested in Pathway of Hope, we would check them even longer. But that's totally voluntary.
Other questions?
You know, everyone has, the officers all have a great story of how they came to the Army. And you mentioned that you were raised Catholic. Can you share with us your story of how you came to the Army?
Yeah, I wasn't raised Catholic actually. My dad's family is very Catholic, but my mother's family is from the Salvation Army. My dad is a Korean War veteran. Well, he's no longer living, but he was a Korean War veteran. And when he was in the Korean War, he had an option to have the American Red Cross or the Salvation Army bring him mail, commissary, things like that. I don't know if it's true, right, because these tales grow, but what the story he would tell was that he would have to pay the American Red Cross to bring those things to him. But the Salvation Army would bring it at no cost. And also bring food, other food. And so he signed up to have his mail and commissary delivered through the Salvation Army when he was in Korea. So when he returned, he found a Salvation Army to kind of volunteer at. Somehow he met my grandmother actually, and eventually my mother. And because he married a Protestant woman in the 70s, she couldn't be a member of the Catholic Church. That's lifted now if you're Catholic. But in the 70s, that was true. So they went to the Salvation Army. So I was carried into the Salvation Army by my mother, and I'm hoping one of my kids will be gracious enough to carry me out one time. Yeah,
My
so
grandfather would say the same about the Red Cross. I know they say it didn't
Yeah.
happen, but
It did.
yeah, everybody who served back then sure
Well,
believes
the
it.
donut dollies
the donut girls, yeah,
in World War I.
yeah.
Yeah. The Red Cross, you had to pay for food, and the donut dollies just gave
Yeah.
donuts for
Yeah.
food.
So, good or bad, I'm a product of the Salvation Army. So I grew up in their faith programs, the youth development programs. They did help me pay for college when I was a young person. I went to the Salvation Army Seminary. All my work experience is from the Salvation Army. I did work for about 18 months for Farm Bureau Insurance. That's it. My daughter thinks it's a cult. She might be right. We're not a cult.
You know, we hear about a lot of challenges and they kind of be discouraging, but within my own family, I mentioned the Duke before, I have a cousin who got involved. I'm from Scott County and there's a lot of challenges there. There's a book, Canary in the Coal Mine, about that county.
Yeah.
There was a major hepatitis outbreak and a lot of opioid addiction and issues in the county. But yeah, a cousin who's a year and a half older than me got involved and had a rough path for about 20 years and ended up in prison twice. And both times he came out through the ARC reentry program.
Yeah.
And it saved his life. And now he's married, he runs a business, he's been totally sober for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it's a Salvation Army program that helped him, and it's helped our family by helping him.
Yeah. Again, I'm not an expert in recovery, but what I understand is that relapse is common or even kind of part of that recovery thing, so it's not uncommon for people to go through a program more than once. But that's a great testament to the work, yeah.
How many nations throughout the world?
137.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did you have something else?
I just want to make one comment.
Oh.
It's obvious. This is a unique organization, and we have so many advisory board members, so many volunteers, so many individual donors that you all have supported through the years. I want to thank you because Angel Tree, Coach for Kids, Radiothon, all kinds of different events that we have. This Kiwanis Club has stepped up, either individually or collectively, to help. And
Yes, 6 a.m. radiothon, oh my goodness.
Yes.
But you know, that radiothon is so much fun.
But it is fun.
It is
a
so
lot
much
of
fun, and even if you can't do the 6 a.m. call, you can show up. It's so
Yeah.
fun to do
Answer
that.
phones and
And
collect
if
money.
you've not rung the bells, anyone here not rung the bell? I don't think there is a soul here who hasn't got out and rung the bell. That is the most humanity affirming experience you can have.
I agree. I really enjoy that every year. And very rewarding.
It tells you so much about people too, because
Yeah.
you see, there's been times where I've been sitting here and I've watched somebody walk towards the kettle and I think, okay. Was this thing bolted down? And then the next thing, they're reaching into their pockets and pulling out all this change they've collected for a year because somewhere along the line they've been touched by the Salvation Army. And then the people with the expensive clothes and everything else, they won't even wish you Merry Christmas. They won't even look at you. And it's
Indiana
just-
Benedict?
I'm sorry?
Indiana Benedict?
Here.
Well, again, thank you for letting me speak today, and thank you for all your support.
Eggs Benedict?
Biscuit platter, eggs on the side.
The food action.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll do a photo now.
German skillet? And what kind of bread you have, sir? Pancakes?
That's a good breath.
And you can